Welcome back to Reddit Drama Unpacked, where betrayal isn't the end, it's the start of something much bigger. Today's story takes you into a world of infidelity, deception, and international crime, where one man's heartbreak became his ultimate weapon. Stay till the end, because you won't believe how deep this rabbit hole goes. The early years of my marriage felt like a dream I never dared believe I could live. Coming from a broken home where betrayal was routine and love was weaponized, I had spent my entire childhood vowing that my life would not echo my parents'. My father was a serial cheater. My mother, ever forgiving, ever patient, absorbed humiliation like oxygen, as if enduring was her role in life. I had watched her cry in the kitchen late at night, while my father stumbled in reeking of cheap perfume and whiskey. I hated him for what he did to her, and I despised what that made me feel about love. So when I met Jodie in high school, I thought I had found my safe harbor. She was kind, gentle, full of laughter and dreams. We bonded over shared aspirations for a simple, stable life, one free of betrayal, lies, and broken promises. We dated throughout high school, broke up briefly during one of our youthful arguments, but always found our way back to each other. We were each other's firsts, sharing our most intimate moments with a kind of innocence that made me believe our love was different. 9 months after graduation, we married, convinced that nothing could ever come between us. I worked hard to build a career in RV sales, rising steadily through the ranks, while Jodie pursued administrative work at a mid-sized firm. We bought a house. Well, technically my mother and stepfather bought it for us, but it was our home nonetheless. Our life was modest but peaceful, and most importantly, it was honest, or so I believed. Everything changed on an ordinary Friday morning. My phone rang. The caller ID showed an unknown number. Normally I wouldn't have answered, assuming it was some IRS scammer or telemarketer, but something in me said to pick up. I did. "Hello? This isn't your wife, Mr. Taylor," a man's voice said crisply. His tone was clinical, detached. I'm sorry, who is this?" "My name is Michael Hamilton. I work with your wife." I paused. "Is Jodie okay?" "She's fine, physically, but I think you need to know something." The conversation that followed knocked the breath out of me. According to Michael, Jodie was involved with a co-worker named Stan Morrison. They were not only having lunch together daily, but had made reservations for dinner, dancing, and a hotel stay that very weekend. Stan had even reserved a suite for them. Michael explained that Jodie believed I loved her enough to allow her to explore. She saw this as some kind of harmless experiment that wouldn't threaten our marriage. I stood there, heart pounding, hearing echoes of my mother's voice in my head. I love him. Those words had kept my mother trapped in misery for years. I refused to be that man. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked Michael, still stunned. His voice darkened. "Because I lived through it once. My wife cheated on me. The legal system failed me. I lost everything. I don't want another man to walk into this blind." The conversation ended, but my mind wouldn't. My marriage, everything I had built to avoid repeating my father's sins, was teetering on the edge of ruin. I didn't know whether to confront Jodie or wait. If Michael was lying, I risked destroying trust unnecessarily. But if he was telling the truth, hesitation would only give her more time to execute her betrayal. I decided to prepare for the worst. That same day, I hired a private investigator. We quickly developed a plan. He would follow Jodie discreetly, gather evidence, and document her movements. Meanwhile, I had to play my part at home, the oblivious, trusting husband. When I returned home that evening, Jodie greeted me with her usual warmth. She kissed me, her lips soft and familiar. We cooked dinner together. She was radiant, wearing her favorite summer dress, chatting about her day as if nothing was amiss. It was almost enough to make me doubt Michael's words, but underneath my forced smiles, my stomach churned. I watched her like a hawk, noticing every minor detail. The faint smell of a different cologne clinging to her hair, the nervous way she checked her phone when she thought I wasn't looking. She was either a master manipulator or utterly convinced that I would accept anything she did. That night, as I lay in bed beside her, unable to sleep, I rehearsed every scenario in my mind. Could I forgive her? Should I? My mother's pain told me everything I needed to know. No. Forgiveness would only open the door for more betrayal. Early the next morning, she left for work without the usual goodbye kiss. The house felt colder in her absence. I spent that Saturday executing the plan. I met with my lawyer, a recommendation from my boss's legal team. I told her everything. Michael's tip, my suspicions, my refusal to live in denial like my mother had. "We'll prepare everything. If she goes through with this, you'll be ready," my lawyer assured me. By Sunday night, I had the surveillance footage in hand. Everything was confirmed. The lunches, the hotel reservations, and the intimate behavior between Jody and Stan. My heart broke as I watched the recordings, but the pain was quickly overtaken by clarity. There was no coming back from this. Monday arrived like a loaded gun. The weight of what I had learned over the weekend made the simple routine of shaving and dressing feel foreign, mechanical. I was going through the motions, but my mind was already wading through legal strategies and emotional landmines. The man I used to be, the one who trusted, who loved without reservation, was dissolving under the crushing force of reality. I left for work, barely remembering the drive. My private investigator was already in motion, trailing Jody, updating me with short, sharp messages that pinged my phone throughout the morning. Jody seen leaving with Stan. Hotel suite confirmed. Surveillance ongoing. Each ping was another nail in the coffin of my marriage. At noon, I stepped outside to clear my head and found myself walking aimlessly through the nearby park. The vibrant chatter of kids on the playground, the rhythmic swish of joggers' sneakers, life around me carried on, blissfully ignorant of the implosion inside my chest. Then my phone rang again. This time it was my lawyer. "Good afternoon, Trey. We've completed the initial paperwork. If you choose to proceed, we can serve her as early as tomorrow morning." Her voice was calm, professional, but I could sense the concern beneath her words. She knew how volatile this was, how permanent my next steps would be. My jaw clenched involuntarily. "Do it," I said. My voice didn't shake. It surprised even me. "I want the papers served immediately after her affair is consummated." "That's cold," she said softly. "It's necessary." We hung up. By 5 p.m. I was back home, pacing the living room, glancing every few seconds at the front door like a man waiting for a ghost. The house was eerily quiet. No dinner smells from the kitchen, no familiar hum of Jody's laughter or voice. The silence was deafening. Finally, at 5:45 p.m., I heard her coming down the stairs. She looked breathtaking, beautiful in a way that was almost cinematic. She wore the same outfit Michael had described, a tight black dress with a plunging neckline, elegant but undeniably provocative. Her overnight bag sat casually in her hand, like this was just another harmless girls' night out. "You look beautiful," I said, forcing a smile, every word slicing my throat like glass. Her smile was warm. "Thanks, honey." "What's the occasion?" I asked. She hesitated, then answered with disarming ease. "One of the guys at work has been asking me out. I figured it would be fun to have a new experience." My face froze. "A date?" She nodded casually. "Dinner, dancing, and yes, we've talked about spending the night together. Don't worry, I'll be back by noon tomorrow." It was as if she was asking me to pick up milk on my way home, not announcing she was about to sleep with another man. "You can't be serious, Jody," she chuckled softly, like I was being overly dramatic. "Relax, Trey. It's just one night. Nothing's going to change between us. No, if you leave tonight, we're done." She rolled her eyes. "Oh, come on. Don't make this into a bigger deal than it is." Just then, a car horn beeped outside. "That's him," she said, walking toward the door. I moved to block her path. My hands were trembling. "Don't do this." "I have to," she said softly, kissing me on the cheek, as if this was some romantic goodbye. "You'll see. Tomorrow everything will go back to normal." Her confidence was almost terrifying. She slipped past me with the ease of someone who believed her actions were entirely justified. The door closed behind her, and my legs nearly buckled. I stood there for a long moment, the echo of her heels fading into the night. My stomach churned, but I knew exactly what needed to be done. I walked to the fireplace, opened the safe and pulled out the divorce packet my lawyer had prepared. Then, with cold precision, I began erasing Jody from the home we had built together. Her clothes, her makeup, her shoes, everything that bore her scent or presence was packed into garbage bags. Birth certificate, diploma, social security card, photo albums, trinkets from her family, loaded into her car, which I pushed out of the garage and onto the curb. I emptied the closet, wiped the bathroom counter clean, even removed the framed photos from the walls. By the time I was finished, the house felt cavernous, like a vacant museum. I collapsed on the couch, exhausted but unable to sleep. My thoughts spun wildly. Anger, sadness, disgust. They rotated like a cruel carousel in my brain. In the background, Hogan's Heroes reruns played on the TV, their absurd comedy only amplifying my despair. The next 2 days passed in a surreal blur. The investigator delivered video footage, Jody and Stan together at dinner, kissing as they entered the hotel, arms wrapped around each other like teenagers. My stomach tightened, but no tears came. The emotions had calcified into a solid wall of ice. Monday morning arrived, and with it, the knock I'd been waiting for. Jody stood at the door, still wearing the same breathtaking dress but now wrinkled and tired. She smiled, confused but casual. "Hey, my key doesn't work, and why's my car parked on the street?" I stared at her. "Because you don't live here anymore." Her eyes narrowed. "Don't be ridiculous. I told you, Jody, if you walked out that door Friday night you wouldn't have a home to come back to. I meant it." She tried to push past me, but I held firm. "Don't make me call the police." "You can't do this," she screamed. "This is my house too." "It belongs to my mother and stepfather," I corrected. "And they've decided you're no longer welcome here." The look on her face was a mixture of disbelief, rage, and something even darker, realization. For a few seconds, she said nothing. Then she stepped back, her lip trembling, but her pride still intact. "This isn't over," she whispered. "No, Jody," I said. "It's already over." And with that, I closed the door. The days that followed unfolded like some surreal play, as if life itself was mocking me with the absurdity of it all. The moment the door slammed shut on Jody, the reality of what I had done didn't bring relief. It brought a heavy, hollow ache. My stomach remained in knots as I tried to resume some semblance of routine. Tuesday morning, my phone rang, a number I recognized. It was Michael Hamilton. "Trey," he greeted. "I figured you might want to know what's going on over here." I sighed and slumped deeper into my chair. "What is it, Michael?" "Well, your wife showed up to work today," he said, his voice laced with dry amusement. "She walked in like nothing happened, but rumor spreads fast in this place. The moment word got out that she had been served divorce papers, people started whispering. Stan didn't even show up today." That last part gave me a strange sense of satisfaction. Stan, her affair partner, the man who thought he could walk into my life and help destroy everything I built, was apparently too cowardly to face the aftermath. "And the others?" I asked. "Oh, the office is divided. Half of them feel sorry for her, the other half think she got what she deserved. Human nature, you know. People love watching drama unfold, as long as it isn't theirs." I muttered a dry chuckle. "Keep me posted." "You got it." We hung up, and for a brief moment I simply stared at the ceiling, wondering how my life had descended into this bitter theater. That night my mother called again. She had been trying for days. "Trey, please," she pleaded, "talk to your wife." I gritted my teeth. "She's not my wife anymore, Mom." "Oh, honey, she made a mistake, but she's carrying your child." The words struck me like a hammer. My heart skipped a beat. "What?" I asked, my voice barely more than a whisper. "She's pregnant," my mother said, her tone gentle as if that would soften the blow. "She told me a few weeks ago. She didn't want to tell you until she knew you had calmed down." I rubbed my face with both hands, the rage building inside me like a rising inferno. "And you thought hiding this from me was a good idea?" "I didn't want to push you away," she whispered, tears in her voice. "I was hoping you'd give her another chance." "Mom," I said through clenched teeth, "do you remember how Dad's infidelity nearly broke you? Do you remember the nights you cried yourself to sleep while I watched from my room? You taught me to value loyalty. But now you're asking me to ignore everything she's done because she might be pregnant. People change, Trey. They grow." I nearly screamed. "No, Mom, people don't change like that. Cheaters don't suddenly grow a conscience after they've betrayed you." We argued for nearly 30 minutes until I finally hung up, shaking with frustration. It felt like betrayal from every corner of my life. My wife, my family, even my own mother. By Thursday, the private investigator had compiled even more damning evidence. He delivered a thick manila folder to my office, complete with photos, receipts, hotel logs, even surveillance video. As I flipped through the materials, my jaw tightened. There were photos of Jody and Stan at multiple locations, restaurants, hotels, and even public parks. They weren't just having an impulsive fling. They had been building something in the shadows for weeks, maybe months. One particular photo stopped me cold. Jody smiling while holding Stan's hand outside a jewelry store. Were they shopping for a future together? My stomach twisted. Just then, my attorney called. "We're ready for the next phase, Trey," she said. "The court date is set for preliminary hearings. Jody's lawyer has filed a motion contesting the divorce, citing that since she's pregnant, she should receive spousal support." I clenched my fist. She'll get nothing. That's for the judge to decide, but with the evidence we've compiled, we have a very strong case. I swallowed hard, my throat dry. Let's bury them. Friday arrived like the executioner. I walked into the courthouse wearing my best suit, flanked by my lawyer and a pair of paralegals. Across the room sat Jody, looking far less confident than she had been when she strutted out that door a week ago. Her face was pale, her eyes puffy from crying, and seated beside her was Judy, her sister, who couldn't even meet my gaze. The judge entered, calling the courtroom to order. My lawyer made her opening statement, calm and concise, presenting the evidence of infidelity, financial misconduct, and emotional betrayal. She laid out a timeline that painted Jody's affair as not just reckless, but calculated. Then Jody's attorney stood, leaning heavily on the pregnancy argument. He portrayed her as a desperate woman who had made one mistake but deserved forgiveness and support. The judge listened carefully, occasionally glancing over the evidence laid out in front of him. Finally, my attorney requested to play a short video for the court. The video began. Jody and Stan kissing passionately in front of the hotel, holding hands at dinner, and finally, the footage of them entering the hotel room together. The courtroom was silent as the video played. Jody's face turned ashen. Judy buried her face in her hands. When the video ended, the judge folded his hands, his voice steady but sharp. "Mrs. Taylor, your actions are well documented. Regardless of your current condition, your behavior constitutes gross marital misconduct." He turned to her attorney. "Your client's motion for increased spousal support is denied. The divorce will proceed under the existing terms." I exhaled slowly, my chest tight but relieved. As we left the courtroom, Judy tried to approach me, but I raised my hand and shook my head. She froze, her face crumbling. "Trey, please," she whispered. But I kept walking. There was nothing left to say. The courthouse doors slammed shut behind me, and with each step down the marble staircase, I felt the weight of 15 years slowly lift from my shoulders. But the sensation wasn't victory. It was emptiness. Victory, in this case, meant walking away from everything I once held sacred. Over the following weeks, life became strangely mechanical. I buried myself in work at the dealership, selling RVs with robotic efficiency. My co-workers tiptoed around me, sensing the storm still swirling beneath my surface. Clients came and went. Contracts were signed, units were sold, and I existed. My evenings were no better. I sat alone in my house, eating simple dinners, watching television, pretending that I wasn't waiting for my phone to ring. Occasionally my mother called. Sometimes Judy did too, but I rarely answered. The investigator's file sat unopened on my kitchen counter for days. I couldn't bring myself to look through it again. I didn't need more proof of Jody's betrayal. I had already seen enough to last a lifetime, and yet fate wasn't done playing its cruel games. 2 weeks after the court hearing, my phone buzzed. It was Michael Hamilton again. "Trey," he said quietly, "something's come up." I tensed. "What now?" "Stan Morrison was arrested yesterday." I blinked. "Arrested? For what?" "Embezzlement," Michael replied. "Turns out he'd been stealing money from the company IS accounts for months, thousands of dollars. Internal audits caught it. He tried to cover his tracks, but they brought in forensic accountants." My blood ran cold. "That's not all," Michael continued. "There's speculation that some of the money went to Jody." "What?" My heart hammered in my chest. We don't know how much yet, but there are wire transfers under her maiden name going back months. I felt my stomach twist into knots once again. Just when I thought this couldn't get worse, another layer of betrayal unfolded before me. Michael paused before adding, "The FBI's involved now. Federal case." By the end of that day, my lawyer called. "We need to talk, Trey," she said, her voice heavy. "The financial records we obtained during discovery are now part of an ongoing federal investigation." I sat silently, trying to process everything. "She might be facing criminal charges?" I asked. "Yes," she confirmed, "depending on how deeply she was involved." "But the baby," I muttered, feeling a strange conflict rise inside me. There was silence on the line for a moment before she replied, "There's no baby, Trey. That was a lie. The air was sucked from my lungs. All this time I had let the thought of an unborn child cloud my judgment, give me pause, even hope. And it had been a fabrication." My chest tightened and my throat burned as I whispered, "She never even—" But I couldn't finish. "No," my lawyer answered gently. For several moments neither of us spoke. Then she continued, "The silver lining, if you can call it that, is that this strengthens your position. Any attempt she makes to challenge the divorce terms is dead in the water now." Weeks bled into months. Jody disappeared from public view entirely as the investigation escalated. The FBI seized her accounts. News of the embezzlement scandal made local headlines. My dealership became abuzz with rumors. Clients whispered. Employees speculated. And me? I withdrew even further, focusing entirely on work. My only refuge came from the odd evenings when I'd visit the Jacobsons. Dodie and Robert Jacobson had become something of surrogate parents to me. Their unwavering support was a balm I hadn't known I needed. They never asked for details, never judged. They simply provided company and comfort. At one dinner, as we sat on their patio watching the sun set behind their sprawling estate, Dodie placed her hand gently on mine. "You've been through hell, Trey," she said softly. "But you don't have to stay there forever." I managed a weak smile. "Sometimes it feels like that's all I know anymore." Robert, sipping his bourbon, grunted. "Son, the thing about storms, they always pass. Might leave some wreckage behind, but the sky clears eventually." I nodded, grateful for their wisdom even if I struggled to internalize it. Then, as if the universe wanted to test me one last time, Judy reappeared. She showed up at the dealership one afternoon. I spotted her standing awkwardly near my office, hands clasped nervously. I could have ignored her. I should have. But something in her expression, exhaustion, perhaps even shame, made me nod toward the chairs in front of my desk. She sat down slowly, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't expect you to forgive me." I remained silent. "I made mistakes," she continued. "I defended her when I shouldn't have. I protected her lies because she was my sister." My jaw clenched, but I let her continue. "I thought I was helping. I see now that I was enabling." I exhaled sharply through my nose, my voice colder than I intended. "You knew she was still seeing Stan even after everything." She swallowed hard. "I did. And I justified it to myself because I wanted to believe she wasn't completely lost." The silence between us grew thick. "I'm sorry, Trey," she whispered, "more than you know." After a long pause, I finally spoke. "You weren't the one who slept with him." Judy looked up, her eyes moist. "But I let her destroy you." I rubbed my temples, exhaustion flooding me. "You were loyal to the wrong person, Judy." She nodded, wiping a tear away. "I hope someday you can find someone who deserves your loyalty." That night, for the first time in months, I allowed myself to cry, not from weakness, but from relief. Because for the first time, I finally accepted that this chapter was truly over. The autumn wind carried a subtle chill, signaling the shift of seasons. A shift I mirrored emotionally. The storm of betrayal, divorce, and deception had finally subsided. But in its wake was an emptiness that no amount of work could fill. My dealership sales remained strong, my commission checks thick, but the hollowness inside me echoed in every silent evening. Then came the unexpected text message. "Hey Trey, it's Darla, can we talk sometime?" For a moment I stared at my phone as if it belonged to someone else. I hadn't heard from Darla in months. Our last interaction had ended with awkward silence, after our intense but short-lived romance had quietly fizzled out. I debated ignoring it. Part of me had finally found a strange peace in solitude, free from tangled emotions. But curiosity gnawed at me. "Sure," I finally replied. "When and where?" She responded almost immediately. "Tomorrow night. Dinner. My place." The following evening, I stood at Darla's front door, unsure of what I was walking into. She opened the door with a warm but tentative smile. "Hey, Trey." "Hey, Darla." The awkward tension between us melted slightly as I stepped inside. The familiar smell of lasagna filled the air. "You've been busy," I smiled, gesturing toward the kitchen. She laughed softly. "Some things never change." We sat at her small dining table, the atmosphere surprisingly comfortable, despite our long absence from each other's lives. As we ate, Darla finally broke the silence. "I owe you an apology." I looked at her, waiting. "I wasn't fair to you," she said, her voice steady but laced with regret. "I had so much anger inside back then. Anger toward my parents, toward men, toward life in general. And I took it out on you when you didn't deserve it." I nodded slowly, appreciating her honesty, but unsure how to respond. "You were going through hell, and instead of supporting you, I made things harder. I see that now." I exhaled deeply. We both had our demons back then. "Yes, but you faced yours," she said quietly. "I ran from mine." Her vulnerability was disarming. "So why now?" I finally asked. "Why reach out after all this time?" Darla took a deep breath, then met my eyes. "Because I'm tired of running, and because I've realized I miss you." Those words hung in the air between us, heavy with unsaid emotions. "I don't expect anything," she added quickly. "I just wanted you to know." For the first time in a long while, my guarded heart stirred. Over the next few weeks, we began seeing each other again, slowly, carefully. It wasn't easy. Trust was fragile for both of us. But unlike before, we approached things with a newfound honesty that neither of us had been capable of years ago. Our conversations were different now. We spoke of vulnerability, boundaries, and the lessons betrayal had taught us. Darla shared her struggles with control and independence. I spoke of my shattered past and the difficulty of trusting again. Through it all, something unexpected blossomed: genuine companionship. We learned to laugh together again. We cooked, went on walks, attended Jacobson family dinners where Dodie kept winking at us like a proud matchmaker. Even Robert, the gruff but kind-hearted patriarch, had taken a liking to Darla, occasionally pulling me aside to mutter, "She's got some fire, but she's good for you, son." The dealership employees began noticing too. Whispers circulated about how Mr. Taylor seemed lighter lately. Clients complimented my energy. Even my mother, after months of silent tension, cautiously approved when I introduced Darla during Sunday brunch. "I like her," my mother said softly, squeezing my hand beneath the table. "She reminds me a little of myself, stubborn but loyal when it counts." But peace was never permanent. One rainy afternoon, Judy called again. For months, we'd had no contact since her emotional apology. This time, her voice trembled. "Trey, I thought you should know. Stan was released on bail." My chest tightened. "What does that have to do with me?" "He's been trying to find Jody," she whispered, "and Jody's been reaching out to me." "For what?" I asked, my tone ice cold. "She claims she's pregnant again." The words hit me like a sledgehammer. "Don't believe her," I said flatly. "Not again." "I don't," Judy replied quickly. "I think it's a lie. But she's desperate. She's talking crazy, Trey. About making amends, about trying to come back to you." The rage inside me boiled. After everything, after courtrooms, investigations, betrayal, and federal charges, Jody still hadn't learned. "Stay away from her, Judy," I warned. "If she contacts you again, block her number." "I will," Judy promised. "But I thought you deserved to know." I ended the call feeling both fury and pity. Fury for Jody's endless manipulations, pity for the broken woman she'd become. Later that evening, as Darla and I sat on my couch sipping wine, I debated whether to tell her. "You're quiet tonight," she finally said, noticing my turmoil. I looked at her, appreciating her calm patience, a stark contrast to the chaos that Jody represented. "Jody's trying to claw her way back into my life," I admitted. Darla's eyes narrowed, but her voice remained steady. "Do you want to talk about it?" I shook my head. "No, not really. I'm done letting her steal my peace." Darla reached over, placing her hand gently on mine. "Then don't let her." Her simple words held more strength than any legal document or court ruling ever could. That night, as I held Darla close, I realized that true healing wasn't about erasing the past. It was about building something better despite it. And for the first time in years, I genuinely believed I could. As autumn transitioned into winter, the cold winds sweeping through the city mirrored the lingering tension in my life. Although Darla and I had settled into a surprisingly stable rhythm, the specter of Jody's chaos still hovered at the edges of my world, refusing to fade completely. Yet for the first time in years, I was no longer living in reaction to my past. I was actively choosing my present. The dealership thrived, my relationships were stronger, and even my mother, who had once desperately tried to mend the broken marriage, had found peace with my choices. Every Sunday, brunch felt like another small victory over the wreckage that Jody had left behind. But the universe, as always, had one more card to play. It came in the form of a manila envelope, slid across my desk one Wednesday morning by the dealership's receptionist. "This came by courier, Mr. Taylor." I frowned, my instincts immediately on alert. My name was written in hurried handwriting, no return address. The weight of the envelope was substantial. I closed my office door before opening it. Inside was a stack of documents, photographs, and a short handwritten note. "You should know who you've been dealing with." Attached were photos of Darla, some old, some disturbingly recent, taken without her knowledge. But what chilled me was the background of several shots. A man lurking nearby watching her. In one particularly haunting photo, Darla was walking out of her gym, her expression relaxed, oblivious to the man across the street holding a phone aimed directly at her. Beneath the stack were printed emails, dozens of them, messages between Jody and Stan Morrison. My blood ran cold as I read. They had been tracking Darla for months. The emails revealed a sickening plot. If Jody couldn't regain my affection, she and Stan had planned to manufacture a scandal around Darla. Their correspondence detailed plans to hire someone to follow her, take compromising photos, and leak them online, hoping to discredit Darla and humiliate me. The plan was vile, but it wasn't the worst part. The most recent email thread ended just 3 days ago. Jody wrote, "If Trey won't come back willingly, then maybe watching her fall apart will finally break him." My stomach turned. This wasn't just spite. This was obsession. That night, Darla noticed my unease almost immediately. "You're tense," she said softly as we prepared dinner together. I debated whether to show her the envelope. She deserved the truth, but I worried about frightening her. I finally placed the file on the kitchen counter. "Someone's been following you, Darla." Her face paled as she flipped through the photos. "Who did this?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Jody and Stan," I said bitterly. "They never stopped." Darla's hands trembled. She leaned against the counter, breathing heavily. I thought this nightmare was over." "I did too," I admitted. "But apparently they've been watching us for months." Tears welled in her eyes, but she blinked them away, anger replacing fear. "We need to go to the police." I nodded. "I already called my attorney. He's coordinating with law enforcement." "What happens now?" she asked. I exhaled. "Now we fight, but this time we fight together." The following weeks were a whirlwind of meetings with detectives, attorneys, and cybercrime investigators. The police took the threats seriously once they saw the documentation. Restraining orders were quickly filed against both Jody and Stan. But the legal process moved slower than either of us would have liked. In the meantime, Darla and I fortified our lives. I upgraded the security system at both our homes. I bought her a personal alarm and insisted she carry pepper spray. She enrolled in a self-defense course, surprising me with her fierce determination. "You're not the only one who refuses to be a victim, Trey," she said after her first class, sweat still glistening on her brow. Despite the tension, these days drew us closer. The shared adversity forged an even stronger bond between us. Every small act, whether reviewing security footage together or simply sharing a meal in guarded comfort, deepened our partnership. The Jacobsons rallied around us. Dodie called daily, offering support and her usual mix of unsolicited advice and motherly concern. Even Robert, normally stoic, assured me, "You've got a good woman, son. Don't let anyone steal that." But beneath the surface, anxiety simmered. Stan Morrison was still out there, and Jodie, though quieter now under legal pressure, remained unpredictable. One rainy evening, as we sat curled up on Darla's couch watching an old film noir, her phone buzzed. She glanced at it and froze. "What is it?" I asked. Her hands trembled as she handed me the phone. A text message. "Nice night for a walk, isn't it? See you soon." No number. Untraceable. A cold chill ran through me. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. I stared at the screen, my pulse quickening as the simple text pulsed like a beacon of dread in the dim light. "Nice night for a walk, isn't it? See you soon." The message wasn't just a threat. It was psychological warfare. Whoever sent it wanted us to know we were being watched, that no matter how many security cameras, lawyers, or police reports we had, they were still one step ahead. Darla's breathing grew shallow beside me. I wrapped my arm around her, feeling the tremor in her shoulders. "It's okay," I whispered, though I wasn't sure I believed it myself. "We'll handle this." But in truth, my mind was racing through 1,000 worst-case scenarios. I stood up and immediately called Wesley, my old military buddy who still occasionally handled private security for select clients, including me when things got bad. "Wesley, escalation confirmed," I said flatly. "I figured it was coming," he replied without missing a beat. "We're already running enhanced surveillance, but now I'll activate Level 3 protocol." "Good. I need 24/7 coverage on Darla starting tonight." "You got it. And I'll have 2 of my guys rotate surveillance positions around your house as well." I exhaled slowly, thankful once again for the friends I had made in the past. Friends who understood situations that strayed beyond the reach of ordinary law enforcement. By the time Darla and I went to bed, 2 plainclothes security operatives were stationed outside the property, invisible in the rain, but highly alert. Neither of us slept much that night. The following morning, I met Wesley for coffee before heading into the dealership. "Have you traced the burner number yet?" I asked as soon as I sat down. Wesley shook his head. "It's bouncing through too many relays. Whoever sent that message is tech-savvy, professional-grade spoofing." "So we're dealing with more than just Stan?" "I believe so. Stan's not smart enough for this level of digital concealment." I leaned forward. "Jodie," Wesley exhaled sharply. "She's capable, and more importantly, she's desperate. Desperate people made dangerous choices. That much I knew too well." "Any sign of physical surveillance?" Wesley nodded. "We picked up one tail last night. My guys flushed him. No ID yet, but he was clearly trained." That sent another shiver through my gut. "This isn't just a jealous ex. This feels like someone's playing a bigger game," I muttered. Wesley agreed. "We're stepping into organized territory now, and my gut tells me that Jodie's not working alone anymore." The weight of his words sank heavily into me. I wasn't just protecting my heart anymore. I was protecting Darla's life. That afternoon, my attorney Naomi called. "Brace yourself, Trey, the storm's officially here." "What now?" I sighed. Naomi's voice sharpened. "Jodie just filed for an emergency civil restraining order against you." My jaw clenched. "What grounds?" "She claims harassment, intimidation, and ongoing mental cruelty. She's using your enhanced security measures as evidence of intimidation tactics against her." I almost laughed at the absurdity. "She's trying to flip the narrative." "Exactly. She's attempting to establish you as the aggressor, which complicates things if law enforcement needs to intervene." Naomi paused before adding, "It's a smart legal trap. Dirty but smart." We both knew what this meant. If the authorities viewed me as unstable or dangerous, it could shift the investigation in her favor. "She's preparing for endgame, Naomi," I said quietly. "She's laying legal groundwork to defend herself if things explode. Or," Naomi added gravely, "to justify something worse." I knew I needed to confront this escalation head-on. That evening, I sat Darla down at the dining room table. "We need to disappear for a while." Her eyes widened. "You mean leave?" "Temporarily. I've arranged for a safe house upstate. My contacts will keep watch here. But for now I want you somewhere completely off the grid." Darla hesitated, but saw the resolve in my eyes. "All right," she whispered. "I trust you." By midnight, we were on the road. Wesley had secured a secluded cabin in the Adirondacks, remote enough to avoid detection, but within reach if reinforcements were needed. As we drove into the mountains, I couldn't help but glance in the rearview mirror every few minutes. Every set of headlights triggered my adrenaline, but no one followed. When we finally arrived at the cabin, Darla stepped outside, exhaling into the cold mountain air. "It's beautiful," she whispered. I nodded, but beauty was the last thing on my mind. Survival was my only concern. 2 days passed in tense silence. Wesley sent periodic updates. No movements back home, but increased digital activity tracing back to Jody's legal team. They were gathering ammunition for some unknown next move. On the third night, the peace shattered. We were sitting in front of the fireplace, sipping hot tea, when Darla's phone buzzed again. Another message. "The cabin won't keep you safe forever. I know where you are." My blood froze. They had found us. The message shattered whatever fragile sense of security we had left. For a few agonizing seconds, Darla and I sat frozen, staring at the glowing screen in the dim light of the cabin. How did they find us?" Darla's voice cracked. I was already in motion, instinct kicking in. I snatched my secure phone and dialed Wesley immediately. "We've been compromised. They know the cabin." There was no hesitation on the other end. "Get out now!" He was already tracking the situation through our encrypted surveillance network, but even Wesley's most sophisticated countermeasures couldn't to fully prevent a determined adversary with deep resources from tracing us eventually. "They're not amateurs," I growled. "Jody's partnered with someone who knows what they're doing." "Agreed," Wesley replied. "I have extraction teams mobilized. ETA 20 minutes. Don't wait for them. Get moving. I'll meet you halfway." I hung up and turned to Darla. "Pack light. 1 bag only. We leave now." She didn't argue. Her hands trembled, but her movements were swift. She had grown stronger through this nightmare, adapting in ways neither of us anticipated. Within minutes, we were back on the road, the mountain cabin vanishing into the rearview mirror. My mind raced as fast as the SUV accelerated down the dark, winding forest roads. How had they found us? Encrypted files, burner phones, off-grid locations, none of it had been enough. Either Jody's new allies had serious government-level hacking capabilities, or someone in my inner circle had betrayed me, and I wasn't sure which possibility was worse. 20 minutes later, as promised, we linked up with Wesley's convoy at a remote intersection. 2 armored SUVs, fully equipped with military-grade counter-surveillance gear, swallowed us up like guardian wolves. Darla exhaled for the first time since we left the cabin. "Where are we going now?" "A safe house even Jody doesn't know exists," Wesley answered. "Private estate, secure perimeter, fully isolated. They'll have to burn down half the county to reach us there." For the next 2 hours, we drove in complete silence. I studied the surrounding vehicles. Wesley wasn't taking any chances. His team were all ex-military, disciplined, deadly professionals. These weren't security guards. They were war fighters. And that's exactly what I needed now. When we arrived at the estate, the enormity of our situation hit Darla fully for the first time. The sprawling property was encased in layers of fencing, infrared sensors, and motion-triggered lighting. Surveillance drones buzzed quietly overhead. Hidden cameras were embedded in trees and fence posts. "This feels like a war zone," she whispered. "It is," I said grimly. "But it's our war zone." The estate belonged to one of Wesley's private security clients, a retired tech billionaire, who owed us several favors from past operations. It was the kind of place designed to withstand not just burglars, but paramilitary assaults. And now, it was our fortress. As Darla settled in, I sat down with Wesley in the estate's secure operations room. Monitors displayed live feeds from every angle of the property. "Give it to me straight," I said. "How the hell did they find us?" Wesley tapped a keyboard and brought up a digital map. The cabin wasn't compromised directly. Our systems held. But he pulled up cell tower pings. They used a third-party algorithm to triangulate residual signal leakage from Darla's phone. Even with encryption, occasional signal handshakes happen, enough breadcrumbs to estimate your region. I clenched my fists. So even after all our precautions, a tiny digital fingerprint exposed us. Wesley nodded. They're using tech I've only seen on government levels, Trey. Either someone's hired high-level mercenaries, or we're dealing with something far dirtier. My stomach turned. Corporate black ops. Possibly, or foreign contractors. My pulse quickened. The deeper this went, the uglier it became. And Jody? I asked. Wesley's jaw tightened. She's not calling the shots anymore. She may have started this war, but someone else saw an opportunity and stepped in. We both fell silent for a long moment. I need names, Wes. I need to know who's financing this. He nodded grimly. I've activated contacts. We'll trace the money trail, but it won't be easy. I don't care how long it takes, I said darkly. This doesn't end until every last one of them is neutralized. That night, sleep eluded me. Every creak of the estate made my nerves spike. Every passing drone patrol made me clench my jaw tighter. Darla sat next to me on the couch, placing her hand gently over mine. We'll survive this, she whispered. I know, I whispered back, because we don't have any other option. At 3:17 a.m., my encrypted phone buzzed. A simple message from Wesley. I have something. I sat up instantly, adrenaline burning away exhaustion. I grabbed my secure laptop and logged into our private server. Wesley's message loaded with attached files. A name, a company, a silent benefactor pulling strings behind Jody's entire operation. The name hit me like a freight train. I whispered it out loud, my voice trembling with fury. Porter Leland, Jody's father, her powerful, well-connected, manipulative father. The man who had pretended to stay neutral, who had visited me under the guise of peacemaking, who had tried to bribe me months ago to drop everything. He never stopped pulling strings, and now he was orchestrating the entire escalation from the shadows. I slammed my fist onto the table. It's always been him, I growled. He was never trying to save her. He's been using her. Darla's eyes widened. Oh my God, Trey, what do we do? I looked up slowly, my voice cold as steel. We end this. The decision was made. There was no turning back. By sunrise, Wesley had mobilized the full extent of his covert network. This wasn't just about protecting Darla and me anymore. This was war. And like any war, it required a plan, precision, and absolute ruthlessness. In the secure operations room, the entire team gathered. Maps, data streams, and digital profiles glowed on the large screens around us. Every known associate, financial transaction, and recent movement tied to Porter Leland was mapped in excruciating detail. Wesley stood at the head of the table, his voice low but resolute. Porter Leland's organization runs like a hybrid of old money and modern black ops. His legitimate businesses are smokescreens. The real muscle operates under shell corporations, private contractors, and offshore accounts. He clicked the remote, highlighting multiple companies and individuals on the screen. His security division is staffed by former intelligence operatives, CIA, MI6, Mossad, men who've seen dirty wars and don't blink twice pulling triggers, and they're being paid well to keep Trey out of the picture permanently. The weight of the situation pressed on everyone in the room, but I refused to flinch. So how do we get to him, I asked. Wesley's lips curled into a thin smile. We bleed his network first, cut off the arms, and the head becomes vulnerable. He laid out the plan with chilling clarity. Phase 1. Financial disruption. Using a network of ethical hackers, forensic accountants, and offshore informants, Wesley's team would begin freezing assets, exposing illegal transactions, and creating legal nightmares for Leland's shell companies. Lawsuits, frozen bank accounts, and regulatory investigations would start appearing like wildfire within 48 hours. Phase 2. Asset isolation. Simultaneously, Wesley's field teams would locate and neutralize key operatives. They wouldn't be killed, not yet. Instead, they'd be compromised, flipped, or forced into hiding. The goal was to erode Leland's protective shell without giving him justification to escalate openly. Phase 3, direct confrontation. Once isolated, Leland himself would be forced into a corner, vulnerable, exposed, and with no trusted enforcers left to protect him. That's when we would strike. The room fell silent as the gravity of the operation settled in. Darla looked at me, eyes wide with a mixture of fear and fierce determination. "Is this what it takes?" I nodded. "If we want to end this, completely, yes." Wesley added, "If we pull this off, Leland will be begging for a deal, but make no mistake, if anything goes wrong, things could get very bloody." No one spoke for several seconds. Finally, I broke the silence. "Then let's make sure nothing goes wrong." Within hours, Phase 1 ignited like a controlled detonation. Court orders from multiple jurisdictions appeared in Leland's financial system, like ambushes in the dark. Banks froze millions in assets. Auditors arrived unannounced at corporate offices. His accountants panicked as the web of shell companies began unraveling under regulatory scrutiny. Simultaneously, Wesley's hackers breached Leland's private communication networks, siphoning critical intel about his logistics, contractors, and security protocols. The intel provided targets for Phase 2. By day 3, chaos rippled through Leland's empire. 2 of his senior contractors were detained in Dubai after Interpol received anonymously leaked documents exposing arms trafficking. Offshore accounts were flagged for laundering money tied to sanctions violations. Several political figures quietly cut ties, fearing exposure. Wesley's field teams intercepted 4 of Leland's top private operatives. 1 agreed to cooperate immediately, exchanging files, recordings, and operational blueprints in exchange for safe relocation and immunity. The dominoes were falling, but with every success, danger grew. On the evening of the 5th day, as Darla and I sat in the estate's library reviewing newly acquired files, Wesley burst into the room. "We've got a problem." He tossed a tablet onto the table. Live drone footage filled the screen. Leland's dispatched a kill team. The screen showed 3 SUVs converging on the outer perimeter of the estate. "They found us!" Darla gasped. "Not exactly," Wesley said grimly. "They traced one of my field teams. One of my men got sloppy. The team led them here." Alarms blared throughout the estate as defensive protocols engaged. Automated turrets rose from hidden emplacements. Security personnel armed up. "We have a 10-minute window before contact," Wesley calculated. "We hold the estate. We end this here." I stood, my pulse steady but intense. "Positions?" "Already assigned." "Darla stays here in the safe room," Wesley ordered. "No," she said fiercely. "I stay with him." We locked eyes. I saw her terror, but also her unbreakable resolve. She wasn't going to hide again. Wesley looked at me, waiting. I nodded. "She stays." The assault was brutal. Leland's mercenaries were elite, heavily armed, disciplined, and precise. But they weren't prepared for Wesley's defenses. As they breached the outer fence, automated defenses shredded their lead vehicle. Explosions lit the night sky as the SUV flipped into flames. The second vehicle veered, trying to breach the eastern gate, but a barrage of armor-piercing rounds forced them back. The third SUV, realizing the kill zone they'd entered, attempted retreat, but Wesley's snipers perched in elevated positions disabled their tires instantly. Within minutes, the battle became a standoff. Wesley activated loudspeakers. "Surrender! Lay down your weapons! You are surrounded!" For a tense moment, no one moved. Then, one by one, the mercenaries complied, dropping their weapons and raising their hands. The assault was over. As dawn broke, we stood over the captured mercenaries. Wesley's men processed them swiftly for interrogation, but my focus was elsewhere, on the encrypted tablet found inside the lead SUV. As the data decrypted, a new file emerged, encrypted orders, directly signed off by Porter Leland himself. Clear, irrefutable proof tying him to the assassination attempt. "This is it," Wesley whispered. I stared at the screen. No more negotiations, no more games. I turned to Wesley. "Prepare Phase 3. He nodded grimly. It's time. As Wesley and I reviewed the decrypted files pulled from the mercenaries' SUV, it became clear. Porter Leland had escalated beyond anything we'd anticipated. These weren't merely defensive measures or even preemptive strikes. These were sanctioned assassinations. He had given a direct order to have me eliminated, to erase any threat to his empire once and for all. Now we had the smoking gun. The legal evidence was airtight. Audio files, bank transfers, offshore contract payments, explicit written directives signed with Porter's own digital signature. Every federal agency would salivate at the opportunity to dismantle his network. But I knew better. A man like Porter wouldn't allow himself to be dragged through courts like a common criminal. He'd either negotiate his own exit or fight to the bitter end. We needed to give him only one option. Phase 3 commenced at 0500 hours. Wesley S. cyber team simultaneously dumped a curated package of Leland S. criminal empire into the secure servers of multiple agencies: FBI, IRS, Interpol, and Homeland Security. Simultaneously, trusted journalists received encrypted files containing sanitized versions of the same evidence. By 0600, federal agents raided 3 of Leland's shell corporations in Manhattan, Miami, and Zurich. His lieutenants were either arrested, fled, or simply disappeared. By 0700, international banking regulators froze over $300 million in his offshore accounts. His assets were being stripped bare in real time. And at 0730, the first headlines broke across major news outlets. Billionaire power broker Porter Leland under federal investigation for criminal conspiracy attempted murder. The walls were closing in. As the storm unfolded, I remained at the estate, the eye of the hurricane. The security perimeter was locked down, airspace restricted, and all movements monitored. Darla, sitting beside me, stared at the endless stream of breaking news flashing across the monitors. "It's actually happening," she whispered. I nodded but didn't smile. There was still one move left on the board. At 0815, Wesley stepped inside, holding a secure sat phone. "It's him," Wesley said. I took the phone, my voice steady. "Leland." A long silence hummed on the other end before the man finally spoke, his voice dripping with a mixture of rage and forced composure. "You arrogant little soldier, you think you've won?" "This isn't about winning, Porter," I replied coldly. "This is about consequences, something you've spent your entire life avoiding." "You don't understand the world you're playing in," he sneered. "There are forces far bigger than you or me." "And yet," I said, "you're the one calling." He exhaled heavily, the weight of his collapsing empire seeping into every syllable. "You've left me no choice," he admitted. "Actually, Porter," I corrected, "you've had choices at every step, you simply made the wrong ones." Another pause. "What do you want?" His voice was bitter now, defeated. "I want your complete and total surrender," I stated. "You'll turn yourself in to federal authorities. You'll provide full cooperation and documentation to dismantle your own network. And you'll sign a legally binding confession admitting your crimes." "And if I don't?" "Then tomorrow morning," I said calmly, "every remaining piece of evidence, including the assassination orders, goes public. And not just to the authorities, but to every journalist, politician, and corporate partner you've ever worked with." Silence stretched once more. Finally, his voice broke. "You're a ruthless bastard, Trey." "I learned from the best," I replied. Then I hung up. By noon, Porter Leland was in federal custody, surrounded by U.S. Marshals, flanked by attorneys and federal prosecutors. He was led through the front doors of the Manhattan Federal Building, humiliated, broken, and fully exposed. His attorneys negotiated feverishly behind closed doors, attempting to broker limited immunity in exchange for dismantling his criminal empire. But there would be no full escape. His assets were gone, his allies scattered, and his empire decimated. It was over. That evening, as the sun dipped low behind the hills, I stood on the estate balcony with Darla. The cool autumn breeze carried the scent of pine and distant rain. For the first time in what felt like years, my pulse slowed, my mind at peace. Darla leaned into me, her head resting against my shoulder. "It's done, isn't it?" I nodded. "Yes, it's finally over." "Do you feel better?" she asked softly. I didn't answer right away. "I feel lighter," I said finally, "but not better. There's no victory in destroying someone, only necessity." She squeezed my hand. "Then maybe now we can finally live." I kissed her forehead, whispering, "Yes, now we live." The following months were quiet. Leland's trial became one of the most sensational spectacles in years. His name splashed across headlines, but I paid little attention. The world could devour his downfall. I had no more business with him. Darla and I slowly rebuilt a normal life. We traveled, invested in new businesses, and surrounded ourselves with loyal friends who had stood by us through the storm. Trust, once shattered, was carefully reassembled, brick by brick. Even my mother, after long conversations, finally came to accept this chapter of my life. The old wounds between us healed with time and honesty. And as for Vanessa, her fate was sealed alongside Porter's. Federal indictments, prison time, a distant memory now, like a bad dream fading with each sunrise. One evening, sitting under the starlit sky, Darla raised her wine glass. "To survival," she toasted. I smiled. "No," I corrected gently. "To redemption." Our glasses clinked softly in the quiet night. For the first time in a long, brutal journey, I was no longer surviving, I was living. 6 months later, the war was officially over. The federal investigations had run their course, the courts had rendered their judgments, and the empire of Porter Leland was nothing but a cautionary tale whispered behind closed doors. I sat in my office, sunlight cutting clean lines through the tall windows, the warm glow contrasting sharply against the cold steel of what my life had once been. My name was cleared. The FBI had publicly exonerated me. Every attempt Vanessa and Porter made to implicate me had crumbled under the weight of overwhelming evidence, most of it delivered directly by Wesley's careful hand. The media tried briefly to sensationalize the story, but without any real scandal attached to my name. The headlines faded quickly. Porter Leland pled guilty. Vanessa pled guilty. Both accepted plea agreements that spared them life sentences, but still condemned them to lengthy prison terms. Porter received 18 years in a federal facility. Vanessa was sentenced to 9 years, with the possibility of parole after 6. But they would never again be a threat. Their days of manipulation and deception had finally reached a brick wall they could no longer scale. Even Russell Dixon had fully cooperated, trading his testimony for immunity. In the end, Porter's entire network collapsed like a house of cards under the pressure of its own corruption. It was over. At last. But victory is a strange thing. You can dismantle your enemies, you can win every legal battle, you can secure your future. But the weight of war still clings to you, like smoke to a soldier's uniform after the battlefield clears. Wesley understood that better than anyone. He stopped by my office almost daily, less as a bodyguard now, more as my closest friend, my tether to sanity. "You still haven't unpacked everything, have you?" Wesley said one afternoon, glancing at the sealed boxes lining one corner of my office. I shook my head. "Some ghosts aren't worth unpacking. Or maybe you're just not ready to let them go," he countered. I smiled faintly. Maybe both. The truth was, I didn't need those boxes unpacked. They were reminders of a version of me that no longer existed. The man who once believed in partnership, loyalty, and love without conditions had been reborn through fire. What remained was something stronger, but harder, sharper, more careful. And yet, despite everything I had lost, I had gained something irreplaceable. Darla. Darla's presence in my life had transformed from unexpected companionship into an unshakable bond. Our rough beginnings had sharpened into a rhythm of mutual understanding and, surprisingly, deep trust. Unlike Vanessa, Darla didn't manipulate. She didn't pretend. She was unapologetically herself, sharp-tongued, fiercely independent, occasionally difficult but always honest. She knew my darkness and she stayed anyway. On our 6-month anniversary, she brought me to the same Jacobson estate where so much of my story had taken its unexpected turn. As we walked beneath the arching oak trees, Dodie Jacobson approached us with her usual warmth, wrapping me in a familiar embrace. "You're finally smiling for real," Dodie whispered in my ear. Yeah, I said, squeezing her hand. I guess I am. She pulled back and studied me, her eyes shining with approval. About damn time. Robert, sitting nearby with his cigar and a tumbler of scotch, raised his glass in our direction. To survivors, he said gruffly. No, I corrected him with a grin. To the ones who refused to stay broken. The small circle around us raised their glasses in unison, and for the first time in years, I allowed myself to believe in something I thought I'd lost forever. Peace. But the story wasn't completely finished. There was still one man left in the shadows, a name Wesley had unearthed during the investigation, but kept tucked away until the dust settled. A financier in the Cayman Islands who had quietly handled some of Porter S. off-the-books transactions. He wasn't just laundering money. He was hiding assets for multiple criminal organizations. His name, Elias Mercer. Not related to Tristan Mercer, but a far more dangerous player. Wesley approached me about him shortly after the last trial concluded. Do you want me to handle it? Wesley asked bluntly. I shook my head. No, we're out. You're sure? Yes, Elias isn't our war. The game's changed. Our mission was survival, and we've done that. Wesley exhaled slowly, as if releasing months of tension. It's strange to stop fighting. It is, I agreed. But if you keep swinging long after the war's over, eventually you start becoming the thing you were fighting. Wesley smiled faintly. That's the best thing you've said since this whole mess started. Write it down, I teased. You'll want to quote me someday. We both laughed. Real, unforced laughter. The kind of laughter you forget exists during long wars. Months later, on a quiet morning with nothing but the birdsong outside the windows, I awoke beside Darla, sunlight dancing across her hair. She stirred, blinked sleepily and whispered, "What time is it?" "Doesn't matter," I said softly. "We're not in a hurry anymore." She smiled, resting her head on my chest. "Promise me something." "Anything." "Promise me the war is truly over, that you won't keep chasing ghosts." I looked at her, the woman who had stood with me through hell, and felt the final weight lifting off my chest. "I promise," I said. For the first time since my marriage had crumbled, since betrayal tore my life apart, since Vanessa's web nearly strangled me, I truly meant it. The war was over, and I was free. The world moves on whether you're ready or not, and eventually even the deepest scars begin to fade, or at least they stop bleeding. I had built a new life, one piece at a time. Darla and I had moved in together 6 months earlier. The house we shared wasn't lavish or grand, but it was peaceful. More importantly, it was honest. Every piece of furniture, every photo on the walls was something we chose together. There were no ghosts in this home, only choices. Work at the dealership had stabilized. My name was no longer whispered in office hallways, no longer linked to scandal, no longer clouded by betrayal. New clients came in, drawn by reputation, not controversy. The nightmares had mostly stopped. Mostly. Every now and then, when the wind howled just right through the windows at night, I could hear the echoes of the past. Vanessa's voice, Porter's threats, the FBI interviews, the sound of the pen scratching across divorce papers. But Darla was always there beside me, grounding me, reminding me that it was over. We had finally carved out something resembling happiness, until the letter arrived. It came by certified mail, no return address. The envelope was thick, heavy, the kind of package that practically radiates bad news even before you open it. I stared at it for several minutes before finally slicing it open. Inside were several documents, notarized statements, financial reports, and one handwritten letter. The first few pages detailed a private trust account registered in the Cayman Islands. The balance was staggering, $3.8 million. The account was in my name. I flipped through the papers in disbelief. The accompanying letter was short, written in a careful, elegant hand I immediately recognized. Vanessa. Trey. If you are reading this, then the world has shifted in ways neither of us anticipated. Before everything collapsed, Porter set up multiple offshore accounts for himself, but also for me. Insurance policies, hidden funds, fallback plans in case our schemes unraveled. When the dust settled, I made certain arrangements. Some of the assets were seized, but not all. This is what remains. Consider it restitution, or perhaps penance. I know you will never forgive me. I no longer ask for it. But I hope, in whatever life you build now, this will help you. It is legally clean. The enclosed documents will verify that. I wish you peace. Vanessa. For the first time in a long time, I found myself paralyzed. This money, the blood money, sat in my hands, technically clean, legally processed, fully documented. The federal authorities had already concluded their investigations and had no interest in these funds. And yet, was this her final manipulation, a way to leave her mark on my life one last time, or was it genuine remorse? I showed the documents to Wesley first. You could take it, he said after reading everything carefully. By every legal metric, this is clean, untouchable. Hell, most people would call it poetic justice. But, I asked, but you don't owe her a damn thing, he said simply. You survived without this, you rebuilt everything without her help. He was right. And yet the money sat there like a coiled snake on my desk, hissing silently. I debated for days whether to show the letter to Darla. Finally, one quiet evening, I handed her the envelope. She read every word slowly, then looked at me with that calm, penetrating gaze of hers. What are you thinking? She asked softly. I don't know, I admitted. Part of me feels like taking it would make me complicit somehow, like accepting a reward for surviving hell. She nodded. And the other part? The practical part says we could do a lot with that money. Start fresh, travel, build something even stronger. Darla leaned forward, taking my hands. You're not responsible for where that money came from, she said gently. She left it behind because she couldn't destroy you. You survived despite her, not because of her. And if I take it, I asked. Then we make sure it's used for something good, she said. Turn her failure into something meaningful. That's the only way you win this last battle. The next morning I went to the bank. The trust was real, fully verified, completely legitimate. By noon the funds were transferred into a new joint account, one held by me and Darla. Over the following months we donated a portion to victims of financial fraud, people like me who had been manipulated and left for dead by the people they trusted most. We invested the rest into our future, a new business, a home renovation, travel experiences we'd only dreamed of, and we lived. For the first time, truly lived. 2 years after Vanessa's incarceration, I received one last letter. Not from her, from the prison chaplain. Mr. Taylor, I thought you should know. Vanessa has passed. Natural causes. No foul play suspected. She spoke of you often in our final conversations, not to blame, not to beg. Only to say she hoped you had found peace. She died quietly, alone. May you continue forward without the weight of her memory. As I stood at her unmarked grave weeks later, I felt no rage, no sadness, only silence. The war was truly over. I walked away from the cemetery with Darla at my side, our fingers interlaced, hearts steady. Life had offered its worst. We had endured. And finally, we were free. It had been 3 years since Vanessa's passing. The world had moved forward. Darla and I were married now. A simple ceremony in a vineyard outside Napa Valley. No grand spectacle, just a handful of people who had stood by us when the world was on fire. Wesley was my best man. Dodie and Robert, who had become like surrogate parents, beamed in the front row. My mother even attended, fully supportive, having learned to let go of the ghosts of her own past. The dealership had flourished. Our new business venture, a boutique RV experience for wealthy retirees, had taken off beyond our wildest dreams. We had carved something beautiful from the wreckage. Life was peaceful, until the knock at the door. It was a rainy Thursday afternoon when it happened. I opened the door expecting a delivery. Instead, a young woman stood there, mid-20s, brown hair pulled into a loose bun, emerald eyes that were hauntingly familiar. I froze. "Mr. Taylor?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. "Yes," I managed. "My name is Emily." She paused, then added softly, "Emily Morrison." Morrison. The surname hit like a freight train. My pulse spiked. The echoes of Stan Morrison, the man who had nearly destroyed my marriage, flooded my mind. Before I could respond, she continued, "I believe you're my biological father." The world spun. I started, but the words evaporated from my mouth. "My mother was Jody," Emily said, her eyes welling up. She never told you." The air thickened. My throat closed. My mind raced to the old days, to Judy telling me that Jody had lied about being pregnant, that the pregnancy was a manipulation tactic to guilt me into forgiveness. But what if it hadn't been a lie? What if... "My mother always said you abandoned us," Emily whispered. "But last year, after she passed, Judy told me the truth. She showed me the divorce papers, the private investigator's footage, everything." I swallowed hard, my hands shaking. "Why now?" I croaked. "Because I spent most of my life believing one version of events," Emily said, her voice breaking. "And now I know that version wasn't real." Tears streaked her face. "I needed to see you. I needed to meet you." I stumbled backward, motioning her inside. Darla appeared from the kitchen, instantly sensing something seismic unfolding. "Who?" she began. "This is Emily," I rasped. "Jody's daughter. My daughter." The words tasted foreign, like speaking a language I barely knew. Darla's eyes widened but softened instantly. She approached Emily, extending her hand warmly. "Come in, sweetheart," she said gently. "We've waited long enough." We sat in the living room, the storm outside raging as if mirroring my own turmoil. Emily told us everything, how Judy had shielded her from the truth for years, how Jody had moved them to Florida, spinning lies about abandonment and betrayal, how Judy, after years of guilt, had finally confessed on her deathbed. I felt a strange combination of grief and fury toward Judy, but the anger quickly dissolved under the weight of something far more powerful: responsibility. Over the next few weeks we talked, cried, and pieced together the shattered timeline. Of course, we took the DNA test. It was irrefutable. 99.98% match. She was mine. For months I lived in a fog, half guilt, half gratitude. Guilt for not being there. Guilt for not fighting harder to uncover the truth. Gratitude for finally having this chance. Emily was brilliant, fiercely independent like her mother, but kind, curious, and sharp like my mother. She had just completed nursing school and dreamed of becoming a pediatric nurse. I could not rewind time. I could not erase the years lost. But I could be here now. Darla embraced her fully, as if she had always belonged. The woman who had stood beside me through the darkest hours now stood beside me again as we rebuilt something unexpected: a family. One sunny afternoon, standing by the lake near our house, Emily looked at me with tearful eyes. "You know," she said softly, "I always wondered what it would feel like to have a father." I placed my hand on her shoulder, steadying my voice. "And I always wondered what it would feel like to have a daughter." We smiled through our tears. Sometimes life doesn't give you second chances. Sometimes it gives you miracles dressed in brokenness. Months had passed since Emily entered my life. The healing had begun. I thought I had finally closed every door to the past. But life has a wicked sense of humor. It was a rainy evening, again, as if storms had a contract with my destiny. As I returned home from work, Darla greeted me with a strange expression, a mixture of confusion and concern. "There's a letter for you," she said, handing me a thick, cream-colored envelope. It had no return address. The handwriting, though, sent a cold chill crawling down my spine. It was Judy's. I sat at the dining table, my hands trembling as I broke the seal. Inside was a multi-page letter. "Dear Trey, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone. I owed you the truth far earlier, but I was a coward, always protecting my sister, even when she didn't deserve it. Jody's pregnancy. It was real, but not in the way you were led to believe. She was already pregnant before she ever stepped into Stan's car that night." My breath caught. "You were never meant to know because she was terrified of losing you. Stan was never the father, but she used the drama as emotional leverage." I clenched my fists. The betrayal sliced deeper than I thought possible. "The baby, Emily, was always yours." I closed my eyes, fighting the flood of emotions. I should have told you the truth from the beginning. Instead, I let years of lies rot everything around us. I hope one day you'll forgive me, but I don't expect it. The final sentence bled guilt and desperation. Protect Emily. She deserves none of this. Darla read the letter with me. She squeezed my hand, her eyes soft with empathy. It doesn't change who you are to Emily now, she whispered. She was right. Emily knew the worst parts of her mother's mistakes, but had chosen to love me anyway. This revelation didn't shake our foundation. It strengthened it. Yet inside, the old anger stirred again. How many lives had Judy manipulated? How much more pain had been needlessly created by her endless loyalty to her broken sister? The next morning, my phone rang. It was Agent Ramirez. Yes, the same FBI agent from the Vanessa ordeal years ago. "Mr. Taylor, I apologize for the sudden call," she began, but something unusual surfaced during an unrelated federal investigation. "What now?" I asked, already exhausted. "A shell company in the Cayman Islands has been linked back to Judy Leland," she explained. "Roughly 3.2 million moved through it between 2018 and 2020. I blinked. I didn't know she had that kind of money. It appears your ex-sister-in-law may have been involved in laundering funds connected to Kleinman S. offshore properties, Vanessa S. Old Circle. I froze. The web wasn't fully dead. It had simply gone dormant. That evening, Emily and I walked by the lake again. "I don't want to lose you," she whispered, sensing my unease. "You won't," I promised. But deep inside, I knew something ugly was waking up again. Not because of Judy's death, but because of the people she left behind. People who knew too much. 3 days after receiving Judy's final letter, my life shifted again. A black SUV waited outside my office that morning. 2 men in dark suits stepped out as I approached. They weren't law enforcement, not exactly. "Mr. Taylor," one of them greeted. "May we speak privately? It concerns Judy Leland and Kleinman's old accounts." My stomach tightened. They introduced themselves simply as part of Federal Asset Recovery Task Force. That vague title screamed, off-the-books operation. I gestured them inside. Inside my office, they got straight to the point. "The shell company linked to Judy isn't isolated," one agent said, sliding a folder toward me. "There is a financial spiderweb connecting multiple individuals who used Kleinman S. Empire to launder money offshore." The file revealed more names, some real estate developers, ex-military contractors, even former government staff, and Judy was right in the middle of it. My hands clenched the folder. "Why me?" The older agent leaned forward. "Because you've intersected with this web multiple times. Damon Ridley's military revenge, Vanessa, Mercer, Kleinman, and now Judy." The room grew colder. "Where is this going?" I asked. The younger agent's voice softened. "There are individuals still active who might perceive you as a threat, especially after Judy S.'s death. They may believe you possess records, passwords, or leverage left behind." I shook my head. "I have nothing." "But they don't know that." The words hung heavy. "And there's Emily," I whispered. "Yes," the agent confirmed. "She may hold unknown value to them, either as leverage or as a loose end." I felt a wave of nausea. My daughter, my child, born into a mess she never deserved. "We're proposing protective custody," the older agent continued. "Temporary relocation for you, Darla, and Emily." I exhaled sharply. "Witness protection?" "Not formally," he said. "More preventative security." Darla and I had built a fragile peace, a new beginning I fought so hard to secure. To abandon it now for an indefinite hiding felt like surrendering everything I survived for. I shook my head. "There has to be another way." The younger agent hesitated. "There is, but it's dangerous." The second option was chilling. "We have a high-level confidential operation," he said. "You cooperate by acting as bait. We leak misinformation suggesting Judy left you access to encrypted financial records. They'll come to you. And then we draw them out, identify key players, and dismantle the remaining network." "And if you fail?" I asked. The younger agent's eyes darkened. "You'll be dead, Mr. Taylor." That night, Darla and I sat on the porch, staring at the rain. I told her everything. She listened silently, gripping my hand. "You've survived worse," she finally whispered. "But this time, you're not alone." I looked into her eyes, fierce, unflinching. "I don't want our daughter growing up afraid," I said. "We end this." Darla nodded. 2 weeks later, the operation began. The agents leaked select data into online black markets. Whispers of the Taylor files, allegedly containing offshore account keys. It didn't take long. Surveillance caught the first movement. Unknown men watching Emily's school. A car tailing Darla. Strange calls with distorted voices. The wolves were coming, but I wasn't prey anymore. It started sooner than we anticipated. The very night the bait was leaked, Darla noticed an unfamiliar black sedan idling 2 blocks from our home. Its headlights would flicker briefly every time we turned a light on. Wesley, who had remained on covert overwatch, called in the update, "They're here and they're circling." By dawn, 2 more cars appeared near Emily's school. One of the SUVs was registered under a shell company tied to Kleinman's offshore holdings. It wasn't just old ghosts sniffing around. This was bigger. "They're coordinating," Wesley confirmed grimly. "Multiple teams." The web was awake. The agents summoned me to the secure facility that morning. "The surveillance activity suggests they believe the data exists," the younger agent said. The older one leaned forward. "But they won't take you immediately. They'll test you first." "Test me?" "They want to gauge your reactions, measure your nerves, see if you're bluffing." As he spoke, an encrypted message appeared on my burner phone. "Mr. Taylor, it's time we talk, for your daughter's sake." I stared at the text, my pulse hammering. "They're pushing," I muttered. "Trying to flush me out." "Exactly," the agent replied. "And that's what we need." 2 nights later, they made their first move. A knock came at my office after hours. When I opened the door, 2 men in civilian clothing stood silently. The taller one carried himself like a former operator. The other spoke. "Mr. Taylor, you've become entangled in business beyond your understanding." I kept my voice level. "Then perhaps you should educate me." They offered me a private meeting with their principal investor, a shadowed figure who had stepped into Kleinman's void. "If you cooperate," the man continued, "this all goes away. You, your wife, your daughter, untouched." "And if I refuse?" The taller one smiled faintly. "Then accidents happen." The game was no longer theoretical. It had turned physical. The agents advised one final gambit. "Agree to the meeting," Wesley urged. "It's the only way to get them all in one place." We arranged a controlled environment, a luxury yacht docked at the marina. It was neutral ground equipped with hidden federal surveillance and tactical teams staged nearby. At 9:00 p.m. I arrived, alone. Inside the yacht's main cabin sat 3 men. In the center, the benefactor. His voice was calm, aristocratic. "Mr. Taylor." I admired Kleinman's operation. Efficient, profitable, but flawed. Emotion compromised him. "And Judy?" I asked coldly. He smiled. "An expendable broker. She played her role." He laid out the deal. "I don't care about your marriage drama," he said. "All I want is access to Kleinman's last offshore network. We believe Judy handed you the encryption keys before her demise." "She didn't," I replied truthfully. "Then your life is no longer useful." I held my stare. "And what happens to my daughter?" "That depends on you." The unspoken threat was chilling. As rehearsed, I paused, feigning defeat. "I need proof you'll let my family walk." The benefactor gestured. A guard brought in Darla and Emily, unharmed but clearly frightened. My fists clenched. "That's your proof," he said coldly. I signaled by tapping my ring against the table, the agreed cue. In seconds, floodlights blinded the cabin. "Federal agents! Nobody move!" The room erupted. Wesley's team stormed the yacht, securing every hostile within seconds. The benefactor S-guards dropped their weapons instantly. They weren't loyal enough to die for him. Darla grabbed Emily as agents ushered them to safety. I finally stood. towering over the once smirking benefactor. "It's over," I said flatly. He stared back, his mask gone. "You're a dead man walking, Taylor." I smiled coldly. "Then I'll keep walking." Within hours, multiple arrests followed. The offshore network collapsed like dominoes, revealing billions in illicit funds, arms deals, and political payoffs tied back to Kleinman's original empire. The benefactor, whose real name turned out to be Victor Laroche, faced dozens of charges: racketeering, conspiracy, attempted kidnapping, and multiple counts of murder for hire. Judy's death, long suspected as suicide, was finally reinvestigated as homicide. Weeks passed. The storm finally subsided. Darla and I were offered permanent relocation, but we declined. We chose instead to rebuild, openly, publicly. The shadows no longer scared me. Emily returned to school. Darla opened her small interior design firm. I resumed work at the dealership, now part owner thanks to the gratitude of the Jacobsons. Every so often I'd receive encrypted updates from Wesley, quiet reminders that old enemies may still lurk. But none dared emerge. The network had been burned to the ground. On a quiet evening, I sat on the porch while Emily played in the yard. Darla brought me a drink and sat beside me. "Do you ever regret not taking the relocation?" she asked softly. I looked at my daughter, laughing freely. Something Judy's betrayal almost stole from me. "No," I said. "I've lived in shadows long enough. The light suits us better." Darla smiled. For the first time in years, peace didn't feel temporary. It felt earned.